Soca on 𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏.
We play the music from where we are to the rest of the world. This is our genre. This is our lifestyle. This is the way we live, the way we love. Team Soca.
Global Soca on 𝒊𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒏.
Introduce us to the word Garifuna and Punta, a part of Caribbean, or should I say the missing connection of our Caribbean heritage as West Indian people. Let's go to the phone lines and speak with 𝒊𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒏𝒂
Good morning, Eric.
Hi, good morning. Let me try to get this right here. Someone sent me to say, is it 𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂? Did I say it correctly?
𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒂.
Okay, I hear you. Good morning. How are you doing today, man?
I am doing great. Ready for this interview. Ready to talk to you.
Now, I pronounced your name as Jose Francisco Avila. Did I pronounce the last name incorrectly?
Avila.
Avila. Beautiful.
Exactly. Yes.
Now, you know, the word Garifuna, first of all, is Garifuna Heritage Month, and we want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us, to educate us. As a West Indian male, we have often heard from Calypso Rose talking about Garifuna, and then we have friends from Belize who talk about the Garifunas, and it's a sort of a missing part of what I refer to as the West Indian Caribbean history. What is a Garifuna?
Garifuna is an Afro-Indigenous group of people who hail, and the reason I say Afro-Indigenous is because it is the mixture of Africans and indigenous Carib, as they were called, Carib and Arawak Indians. That mixture happened in the island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, what the Garifuna call Jurume, which means the homeland of the Garifuna people.
Okay, so 1 second. Repeat that word for St. Vincent for me again, please.
Jurume.
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 Gotcha.
Yeah, Y-U-R-U-M-E-I-N. Jurume. That's how we refer to St. Vincent, again, as the homeland of the Garifuna people. So again, that is where the mixture happened. That mixture became known by the British. The British called them Black Caribs because they were the ones that mixed, and then they called the other ones yellow and red Indians, and our descendants were called Black Carib. That happened in St. Vincent. Those ancestors fought the British for over 30 years to prevent them from taking the land. As a result of that battle, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was the last island in the Caribbean to be colonized.
I wish you had taught me Caribbean history in school. I never knew about St. Vincent. Please repeat that again for our listeners about St. Vincent.
Absolutely. As a result of the fight of our ancestors for over 30 years, St. Vincent and the Grenadines was the last island in the Caribbean to be colonized. And that only happened after they killed the paramount Garifuna chief, 𝒊𝒏𝒔𝒕 on March 14, 1795. That's when he was killed, and after he was killed, they started pursuing the rest of the Black Caribs all across the island. Eventually, they rounded up about 5,000 of our ancestors. These are the British. Rounded up about 5,000 of our ancestors, transferred them to an island called Baliso, which basically is a rock. And as a matter of fact, I'd like to mention that the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines states that the only beings that will survive in Baliso will be reptiles. Well, 5,000 was sent there. Over half the population died there. And then on March 11, 1797, 2,248 of our ancestors were loaded onto 10 British ships, sent through the Caribbean Ocean, no idea where they were going to, The ships stopped in Jamaica to have repairs done in some of them, and then continued. And in that process, 222 of our ancestors perished during that voyage. As a result, on April 12, 1797, 2,026 Garifuna ancestors landed on the island of Roatan, which is north of Honduras. At that time, Roatan was not part of Honduras. Now it is. It's one of the states of Honduras, but back then it wasn't. The Spaniards had already colonized Honduras. So our ancestors negotiated with the Spaniards, who allowed them to cross over to the mainland of Honduras. That was around May of 1797. And from there, they spread east to Nicaragua, west to Belize, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. Belize and Guatemala. So as a result, the Garifuna diaspora, as even today, is based on Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Now, I will say this, having said that, I will say this, Belize is the most talked about country in the Caribbean, and it's because Belize is the only English-speaking country in Central America. Honduras, Guatemala, and Nicaragua are Spanish-speaking. So as a result, that's where a lot of the communication, a lot of the information sort of got lost, misinterpreted, and so forth. But the initial landing of the Garifuna people, as I like to say, as one people, was on April 12, 1797, in the island of Roatan, now part of Honduras. 2,026 landed. And again, they crossed over to the mainland and eventually spread to Belize, Guatemala, and Nicaragua.
So question to you. Is it fair for me to come to the conclusion that the Garifunas were the original people of St. Vincent?
Actually, the original people of St. Vincent was the indigenous people. The English call them Carib, they call them Arawak, the Taínos. Mm-hmm. Those are the original people of St. Vincent. All right. Now, again, our ancestors, according to history, our ancestors were actually, there are many versions, but the one you read the most is that the Africans were on a ship to be distributed as slaves. The ship, actually had a wreckage right in front of St. Vincent. Some of them survived and swam to the island, mm-hmm. where they were welcomed by the indigenous people. Gotcha. Again, the Carib and the Arawak.
It was the slaves who were coming from Africa, shipwrecked,
exactly.
And they went. When we talk about Garifuna culture, just make us a little more aware as to what are the kind of foods you guys eat, the music, the basic things to help us understand, Garifuna people.
Absolutely. I'll start by sharing with you that on May 18, 2001, the Garifuna the Garifuna language, music, and dance were proclaimed by UNESCO as masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. That was the first time the UNESCO issued that proclamation. 19 cultures were identified, and the Garifuna were one of the ones. As a matter of fact, if I'm not wrong, it was the only one from the Americas that was. Now, the reason language was identified, included in that, is because basically now there's a great effort to preserve the Garifuna language, including in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are people going back and forth every year to teach the children and so forth. Now, when I talk about the language, back to your question, the original people, Eric, what's interesting is that the Garifuna language is actually the language of the indigenous people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Wow.
That's the original language. But interestingly enough, 227 years after we were forcibly deported, as I like to say, from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are the only ones that speak it. Even the indigenous people, even the ones in Dominica, lost the language.
Wait. Time out. There are Garifuna's connection in Dominica also?
Eric, the Garifuna ties are all over the Caribbean. Because again, it was the Carib, it was the Arawaks, and they traded among each other. We went from island hopping, and so forth. But Dominica has a Carib population. As a matter of fact, is so they have a special section which is specifically, and I don't want to say the name. Well, it used to be Carib section, Carib town. They changed it and so forth. But yes, there is a large Carib population, and the Caribs again were all over the Caribbean Ocean.
I'm from Trinidad, right? So I know about the Carib and the Arawaks and the wars, etc. So that ties in there. Gotcha. Now we're making a connection. Now I'm getting the connection.
Okay. Exactly. And Eric, and I mentioned to you when we first spoke, I didn't know all of this. I was born in Honduras. I lived in Honduras up until the age of 15. I left Honduras to Boston, Massachusetts. I knew that I was Garifuna, and I knew we spoke the language, and so forth. But what I didn't know, what was Garifuna? What did it mean? And so forth. And it wasn't until I moved to Dallas, Texas, at the age of 34, that I finally decided to do my own research. And that's when I found out the history that I just shared with you. And I found this great book. It's called Sojourners of the Caribbean, but by the late Nancy Gonzalez. She was an American anthropologist who was the one that in her research was able to figure out and make the connection that the Garifuna that she found in Honduras and Guatemala at that time were the same people, the Black Caribs, that were banished by the British in 1797. And she has all kinds of documents. The numbers that I mentioned, the 2026, 2000, that comes from that book. She did research in, in England, France, and on and on. But yes, we are one people.
So let me ask you some basic questions as we wrap things up. What are the foods? What are the staple foods of a Garifuna person?
The traditional is called hudut. Hudutu is what in Africa is called fufu. And I know that it's all over the Caribbean with different names. We also have cassava, which is
cassava.
Cassava bread.
The Arawaks and they love a lot of cassava. Yes,
exactly, exactly. That's part of our diet. Hudut is basically mashed plantain with fish. And so forth. And then, of course, we have our own types of bread and so. But when you look it up, the two that you're going to find are cassava and hudut or hudutu. Because the language has, for instance, hudutu is in Honduras because it's Spanish, right? So they pronounce the U. In Belize, they pronounce it huduk without the last U and so forth. But those are two of the classics. As far as beverages, gifiti is one of the native drinks of the Garifuna. It's basically herbs, made out of herbs, and I seen that all over the Caribbean and so forth. So there are common traits of and I like to say, for instance, I tell people, I was born in Honduras. Again, I didn't know anything. So as a result, I always say I was Honduran. It wasn't until I did my research that I realized that my ancestry is actually from St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
All right, so part of the thing I realized that drumming is a big part of the Garifuna music. Is it because you have that direct trace back to Africa that the drums are an essential part of your celebrations?
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. The drum is the common instrument. I like there's one politician here that when he speaks, he says the following: let's not forget that when you dance to rumba, when you dance to cumbia, and on salsa, and bachata, and I add punta, which is the Garifuna rhythm. Remember Calypso Rose, when she recorded Lewi Punta?
Before I spoke to you, I played that song.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, that's Punta is the first modern popular dance, which is called Punta Rock. That's the first modern. Punta is the traditional dance that was done during wakes and so forth, and basically was considered sacred. Then in 1978, Pen Cayetano, an artist from Belize, he was the one that added electronics and so forth, and kept the drums, and he fastened the pace a little bit, and he called it Punta Rock. So that's the most popular among the young people.
So as we wrap things up, I want you to tell us a couple of things. What's happening for Garifuna month in New York City? That's where you are based. And tell us about your books and how can people be in touch with you.
Absolutely. I can tell you that for the past 16 years here in New York, we have been celebrating Garifuna Heritage Month from March 11th to April the 12th. In commemoration of the forcible displacement of our people on March 11, 1797. This year we have two big events. On March 7, we're going to be at the Bronxborough Hall, where Bronxborough President Vanessa L. Gibson is going to present a proclamation. It's important for me to say that the Bronx was the first place where the Garifuna heritage was recognized. That was in 2008. And then on April the 10th, we're going to be at the New York City Hall. The New York City Hall. And we're going to have presentation of a proclamation. There are going to be 4 nominees on both events. And we're going to have a cultural presentation with the 𝒂𝒓𝒊𝒄 Garifuna Dance Theater. And through the month, we're going to have historical facts on the internet, through email, and so forth. And as far as my contact information, I'll give you the easiest one. Actually, I don't have a problem.
No, don't give your phone number. Facebook, Instagram, any emails?
You can find me on Instagram, on all of them, as 𝒔𝒄𝒄 Avila. 𝒔𝒄𝒄 Avila. That's how I am on all social media, and you can find me there, and you will even find my email there. But that's what's going on. That's what we're doing. It's commemorating, celebrating the Garifuna history, heritage, and more importantly, the contributions that we have made to the development of societies.
Hey man, I want to say thanks for the education. I appreciate it, and it makes St. Vincent an even more important territory in the whole diaspora. You have certainly educate us, and we will stay in touch, and I will come down to the event in New York City and look forward to seeing you there.
And Eric, I have to say this before I leave. St. Vincent also held the first reparations conference back in 2013, what now has become the Caribbean Reparation and the Global Reparation. I was there. The first conference was held in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's how important our country is. It's a pleasure, my brother.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Information, education, humor, and the best of soca, all happening on Global Soca.